when we met last time, we were all obsessed with COVID-19, and we were talking about the impacts of lockdown and so on. And there was an undercurrent point that we were making at the time, or that we were agreeing at the time, I think, which is the problem with events like COVID-19 and wars and huge existential changes is the people who lose out the most are the ones who were already losing out the most when it started. And so the issues that have brought us all together, which essentially social mobility, helping the disadvantaged to get to share in the pie and to contribute to the pie, COVID-19 actually extends that. And in my capacity as Lord Lieutenant, I've spent much of lockdown writing letters to small charities across London, thanking them for their amazing effort. But they are amazing efforts. The amazing thing, for example, if I tell you that one of the charities is called the Pimlico Toy Library, you get the idea of the sort of people I've been writing to. But there are organisations there which were running football clubs for kids from council estates. It turned into food, cooking and distribution hubs to help elderly people who are isolated. The pivot and the milk of human kindness has been truly overwhelming. It is absolutely wonderful. A lot of focus on the NHS nationally, and rightly so, but the unsung heroes are those in those small charities at the community level. And I think what COVID has done to remind us all in this country is the power of our community and how much bonding with each other matters. And again, I speak from a London perspective, but I see Muslim curry restaurants who've started turning out 500 hot meals a day for people stuck at home, etc., etc. They're not doing it for Muslims, they're doing it for people in the community. So I think what we've done is we've rediscovered the power of good people working to support each other in a way that we desperately needed to, because Brexit was busy driving us apart. So the letters that I write, I start them all by saying, historians are going to have a problem explaining this period, how we could, in a week, pivot from division of Brexit into cohesion of COVID-19. So that was really the theme, the backdrop perhaps of our when we met last time. But since we met last time, another enormous existential effect has happened, and that's the Black Lives Matter movement. And the Black Lives Matter movement has been around for some time. It's not a brand new organization. The current wave of global outrage was triggered by the murder, let's call it what it was, of George Floyd in Minneapolis. But in the UK, Black Lives Matter hasn't gone the way that it would have gone, I would argue, pre-COVID. It hasn't gone into violence on the streets. It hasn't gone into outrageous behaviors. It's gone into a sense of sadness and need to change. And I think where now the mood in our country is in a very different place than it has been for a long time. There's a thoughtfulness about things, and there's an urgency to change. So my summary of Black Lives Matter, and I've become a bit of let me just put it simply, an establishment Black Lives Matter magnet. So people write to me about all kinds of issues now about Black Lives Matter, and my message to everybody is the same. First of all, in society, all lives matter, and inclusion is key. And if we found a group that have been particularly excluded, we need to deal with it, because that's a priority, but we shouldn't do that at the expense of all the other groups. All lives matter. Inclusion doesn't go away because of the issues in America. And by the way, America is not the UK, and that's another rant for another time, but quite an important one. Our history, etc., is not the same. But much more importantly, I think, what Black Lives Matter is showing in the UK is how people are, for the first time, really thinking about the issue, as opposed to saying, yeah, that's CSR, so push it over there, that's HR, push it over there, bit of virtue signaling, and so on. And I think the reaction is astonishing. Actually, I think there's an overreaction as opposed to a good reaction, but I don't mind. I'll bag the overreaction if it moves social change in the right direction. What I'm saying in my business life is that bringing people in, inclusion, is a matter of competitive advantage. And I've said this before. It was probably on the video when it died that we were talking about earlier on. But if you have an organization which empathizes with its customers, its supply chain, its regulators, its recruitment pool, etc., its communities, if it empathizes with them, it will clearly, axiomatically fare better than companies that don't empathize with those people. You don't understand your customers, your supply chain, you must be at a disadvantage to the people who do. Therefore, it makes tons of sense that within any organization, you have people across the board who represent those lived experiences. So my message to business is competitive advantage. My message to society is social justice. And what Dan's conceived with PTI is a brilliant marriage of those two things. Because he is saying, let's bring lots and lots of people in business together who care about the human condition and improving the social standing of everybody who deserves it. But let's do it in a way that makes commercial sense to those organizations. So it's not donating something to somebody, it's doing something better, more effectively for bigger impact. So I think what we've got with PTI is a vanguard movement on combining those two amazingly powerful human forces together. The power of community, people coming together to help each other, particularly the disadvantaged, and the power of commercial competitive advantage, capitalism, wealth creation, and so on, which has created the freedoms in the world that we take for granted. So I look, I mean, like Dan, I'm amazed at what Dan has achieved, not because of Dan the man, but just because so many people have tried to do things like this so many times in my lifetime and have not succeeded. And Dan, you've built up this remarkable organization, Head of Steam. You've tapped into a deep well of goodwill and of willingness to make a difference. So I say to everybody on the call today, we were in a pretty good place when we met the last time because there were lots of things that we needed to do. But we had a very much what I would call a yesterday, last year perspective. We were trying to deal with the issues at the speed at which they could be dealt with of a year ago. I think now the issues haven't changed, but the speed has increased. And we need to seize the opportunity that comes from that greater speed.